people flying in and Red Dawn and shooting everything up and then bringing their... No, it wasn't like that. It had been subverted. They had taken our government over, but we didn't even know it. Now, this occurred back in 2000, the summer of 2000. I was in my early 20s. I knew almost nothing about politics. And so I didn't understand why God was showing me this, but it was such a powerful encounter. And in this vision, I was laying in my coffin, but simultaneously I was above ground, able to see what was going on. And this earthquake came. And when this earthquake hit, it was like in the Gospels when it said when Jesus died and when there was an earthquake and people raised up from the dead. In fact, no one ever really expounds on that. The Bible indicates that people from the past were raised up from the dead and were just walking around the city. Whatever happened to those people? Did they live forever? Did they end up getting glorified bodies and going into heaven? No one ever covers that. I would love if any of you have an idea or an understanding, put it in the comments. But it was like that. This shaking came. And when this shaking came, everybody was suddenly raised from the dead. But the shaking came also with the sounding of a shofar, the sounding of a trumpet. And it was a beautiful sound. My wife has had a vision one time where she said, I heard a sound, but when I heard the sound, I saw a rainbow. The sound sounded like a rainbow, if that makes sense. And I said to her, makes sense to me, because when I melted out of my body and into the third heaven, I saw things and I got it. There's other levels of thinking. There's our minds are expanded up in that realm. We really are trapped in an earth realm down here that's base. This is, if you will, the negative. For those of you who remember those old pictures where you'd take a picture and they came out as a negative and they'd be hanging them up and putting water on them to blow them up into an actual picture that you could frame. This earth is like the negative. And I understood that when I got back from this encounter, because what I experienced in heaven was reality. God, love, joy, peace, the reality of his beauty. That is the true reality. And this world that we live in truly is in a fallen state. I'm telling you, those of you who make it to heaven, you are going to be blown away by the beauty of heaven. The most beautiful scene on earth. And by the way, I love scenes on earth. I live surrounded by beautiful mountains. I love the mountains. I love the sunset. I love the purple clouds. On my phone, I've got pictures of the sunset and purple, pink hues in the clouds. I love beauty, but heaven, I'm telling you, this earth has nothing. This world has nothing on heaven. Heaven's beauty is otherworldly. You don't want to miss out on it. And so back to this encounter, I'm buried in the ground in a coffin, knowing that I'm waiting with others. And suddenly there is this earth shaking and the sound of a shofar, and we were raised from the dead. And in this shaking, although we were raised from the dead, it was clear that large numbers of people suffered in America. I couldn't tell you the number, but the number of people that were suffering was great as a result of this earthquake. And I remember seeing the look on Bill Clinton's face. There was this look of concern, and he was clenching his jaw. And in this vision, I understood that he knew why this had happened. He understood what was going on. He knew that he had partaken in this thing that led to this event that really hurt, I want to say, millions of people. And even though he was a partaker of it, he was clenching his jaws. And I never quite understood that back 20 years ago, although I do have more understanding, and hopefully I'll be able to get to it a little bit today in this podcast. And so I saw this world event that was coming, a shaking and lots of death, yet a raising of the dead at the same time. And so I'll get into that a little bit later, but there's another thing that the Lord showed me that was so powerful. And this is for somebody out there. This really helped me. I don't know about you, but before I got saved, before I met the Lord and was born of the Spirit, I was going 100 miles an hour toward hell. And I really needed lots of forgiveness. Now, everybody needs lots of forgiveness, but some of us are a little bit more aware of it, because if you were somebody who was not raised in holiness and righteousness, and if you were somebody who got caught up in a lot of debauchery and bad stuff before you got saved, when you finally had that encounter with Jesus, you're just so so thankful, but you still also have a lot of deliverance that you need to go through. And sometimes you're not convinced that Jesus really loves you. In fact, I remember one time calling up my uncle who helped lead me to the Lord. He was one of the handful of people who pushed me along until finally I was at a Greg Laurie meeting at Calvary Chapel Church in Costa Mesa, California, and gave my life to Christ. But my uncle, he's one of the ones who pushed me along. I remember calling him up, and I had gotten saved, and I said, Uncle, I said, what if I've broken every single commandment? Like, what if I've murdered? What if I've committed adultery? What if I've broken every single commandment?
You're the one the angels cry out to. You're the one the elders cast their crowns before. You're the one the angels cry out to.